Welcome to Backstory with Joan Goldstein. I'm Joan Goldstein. I have the most incredibly fun and interesting people as guests today. They are two people, actually. One is a father, and that is Kung Lee Deng.
Hi.
And the other is the son, who is Zach Deng. And the two of them are engaged in the most futuristic and interesting activities that I could never have thought I would be a part of, but I was. I went to visit them. They have a program that they call virtual reality. And maybe you want to tell us what that's about and how you got started.
Okay. Well, virtual reality, I think, really back a couple of years ago, or even when I was little, I think I really got into computers, and really since then I've been playing a lot of video games. And I think there was a point where my dad was like, okay, you've been playing too much and we need to do something about it. So instead of being the typical Asian stereotype and taking my computer and throwing it out the window, he talked with me. And
that's your dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we decided, hey, we think it's a good idea. Like, we saw that virtual reality was a thing. This was only a couple months ago, really. And we decided, hey, let's start a summer camp. And that summer camp we called VR Maker. And this summer we actually started just going around and just looking at see how people would find virtual reality. And I think it really allowed us to go from father hating video games and the son like hating the fact that his father hated video games to building a better relationship with each other. And we saw that in a lot of cases. Like, sometimes families with their kids would come in, and maybe that family was struggling with their kid playing too much, like the same problem that I guess I had. And then we would see that they would really form a bond playing these virtual reality games, because it was really more immersive and more hands-on, and you could see, hey, maybe it's a game where I can actually socialize or just form a better relationship with my child. So I think that's really where we're heading.
Well, that's, I should explain that Zach is about to enter high school in a month or so, so that's where he is as a teenager. And isn't it interesting that they wanted to connect to each other? They wanted a way to share with each other, and they managed it, and it was through, as you said, this virtual reality. Mm-hmm. Why don't you describe, because I was taken there by a neighbor.
Yeah.
Lisa brought me there, and I had no idea what I was going to experience, but I'm very open to creativity, and I said, oh my goodness, look what they're doing. So they put these goggles on your face so you see through the goggles. And these are for your hands,
yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. And so you're not only going to see, but you're also going to touch.
Yes.
And the next thing I know, I'm looking through this mask, and what do I see? A beautiful green grassy place, and it's all virtual. It's because we're inside a building. And then along comes this big furry cat, and the furry cat comes up to me and wants to snuggle with me and so forth, and I reach down and I touch it and I feel it. Mm-hmm. So this is that's why they call it virtual reality, because you touch, you feel. Do you also hear?
Yeah, most headsets have either headphones built into them or the sound comes directly out of it. So
okay, so all of this is going on. I'm petting this cat, and I'm having a fun time of it. So let's say, what have you been discovering, what have you been doing, and what have you been discovering about virtual reality? Because the one person here mentioned it's a cutting edge, something new. Is it something good for us? Is it something helpful to us? What have you discovered?
I think really with virtual reality, it's like you said, it's very new and it's still being improved today. But I think a lot of parents come into like come into the fact that they think video games have no purpose and they're all just to waste people's time. But virtual reality, I've discovered while letting people of all ages try it, that it's not just kids that play around with it and enjoy it. It's not just kids that play all day and do nothing else. But we actually saw, like I said, the parents come to their kids and say, hey, like, can I play? Can I play with you even? And one of the people that visited, their parents used to be pretty against video games, but now they actually want to get a VR headset just so they can play with their kids. And so I think I've seen VR it's a great way for people to bond. It's also a great way for people to really just build important life skills like cooperation, critical thinking, things like that.
Wow.
So I've really observed so many good things about virtual reality.
Yeah. And you, and Kung Lee, what did you see as the adult?
Well, two words, innocent wonderment. I really think, Joan, when you just put on the goggle, immediately you get transformed into this tranquil garden with a little fat cat.
Yeah.
You know how many minutes you spend in there? More
No.
than 25
Whoa.
straight. But you don't feel 25 minutes pass by
No.
because you were in there, interactive. The best of all, you actually turn back to a childlike state.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's what this VR really puts you into, is not just a 2D image where your hand do mouse stuff and doing 8 hours, your whole body kind of bypass and you just so naturally in there. And I love that you walk around, you laugh, you giggle. And so I'm like, wow, it looked like you have been doing this for life. So
Yeah.
that part, I love it. And later on, you try something you can paint in there. You are an artist, I know, right, Zach?
Mm-hmm.
And she was there painting already a beautiful
very
lotus.
natural,
Remember
yeah.
that one, lotus? And because you do this movement and you are in there, you see what you do. So it really put the body movement kind of in sync where you are naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So as an adult, I observe like, wow, and then we see all those things Zach talk about. Be honest, when he came to me and said, Dad, I want a set of VR, I say,
Yeah.
just
No.
as a parent, I say, I
No.
mean,
Yeah.
but then, I learned a hard lesson, when I started accompanying about 10, 12 years ago back in Princeton. I kind of gave him an iPad that got him addicted to a lot of video game. So to me, I feel guilty as a father. So it's like, what is the right amount of play time? So when he came to me for VR, I originally want to say, no, but now I take a step back and say, son, let's sit down. Let's see how you want to play it.
Yeah.
So we talk about it. So I say my only criteria is you don't play at home alone, and you have to control the time. Number 2, interact with people. So he said, well, why don't we do a summer camp?
Yeah.
And there came this summer camp in downtown Princeton. Princeton Shopping Center actually offered us a nice space, 5,000 square feet, empty space. We just make believe.
Yeah.
But it's good old reality. You have a very lousy, very primitive facility, but once you put a goggle on, you transport to a wonderful place.
It doesn't matter where you are, really.
Right, so we do that. We have community members coming over, families, kids, even have senior group coming. So we start to observe wonderful things taking place. So I say, wow, Zach, good choice. So to me, I'm like, yeah, it's a good thing. Like we too can have something to talk about every day. But one more thing I want to add is, because VR, you can't play VR for too long without tiring. So to me, that cut down how many hours you can play on this.
Yeah.
So that's a healthy amount
Yeah.
of time that you can help, them doing it. So
Physically, I noticed what happened to me is I felt flushed. I felt the blood going through my cheeks, and I thought, what does that mean, Somehow it's a stimulant of some kind. Isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah.
we discussed this, right?
Yeah.
Probably a new experience immersion experience to create new neuron or some connection in you that's dormant for a while or never get activated. We kind of, like there's something called dopamine that release when you really have that new experiences. That's what motivates young kids to play video game, but as well as motivate us adults to have a reward type of, stuff. I think you get rewarded that day.
Yeah. I enjoyed myself. It just also jogged my memory in terms of this kind of virtual reality. I had some friends, family, who had a couple of young children, and one of them was getting into trouble. She wouldn't tell the parents. She wouldn't talk about what was getting in trouble in school. And they didn't know what to do, and the school was saying, well, she's, they're going to push her out the school. And so I said, well, you know what? Let her come and visit me, and maybe we can talk. And what I used, because I go back in time, was puppets.
Yes,
and puppets are like
improv.
the furry, improv. So I had a puppet, and which one did she want?
Wow.
And I had one, and the puppets talked to each other. There you go. It's a virtual reality. And in the puppet, she told me.
See? She was talking to the puppet, right? Absolutely.
And then I found out she was being bullied. And this was the problem, and she was afraid to talk about it. So the parents were clueless, but they wanted to help her. Then I was able to translate it for her to them, and they were able to do something positive to help her. They took her to a different school.
Wow, that was
And this is, and they have never forgotten the fact that I helped them in this way. They're always my best friend, And I think that's similar to what you're talking about. We step into another dimension of ourselves. And somewhere within there's life that we don't normally know about or think about. And we discover ourselves. What did you discover about yourself, Zach?
It's a hard question.
It's a big question. I want to know too.
Yeah.
In terms of discovery, that's a hard question. I think really, I wouldn't say virtual reality has made me like a better person, but I think it's definitely helped me connect with my dad better. And
Lovely.
I think it's a really nice tool, I think, that's helped me in some aspects of my life. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. If we discover something about ourselves, that's a gift. And if it breaks down barriers, especially intergenerational, because you're working with different generations. I noticed that you had an older person there when I was there, and you also had some kids. So you can go with different generations. Does it break down barriers?
Yeah, I'd say it breaks down a lot of, I guess, technology barriers from generation to generation.
That's so important, isn't it?
Right, because for older people to really get to use to mouse and run this crazy program going through mazes is daunting. But for this, you can really very quickly overcome that and start to build a common ground. And so I think that's really a more natural way to use technology without that kind of daunting barrier we talk about, but also psychological too. I changed my mind about video game because of this. He doesn't play. He can't play more than an hour because he get tired.
Yeah.
But then he get creative. He's able to build stuff in there, and other people can enjoy. I said, well, this is definitely the skill for the future, right? How to have this type of skill. He can use this. For example, he used a game called Minecraft in your school project, and what is that project about? I mean, he built something in
I recreated the Battle of Constantinople back in the 1492, I think.
Oh.
I'm not completely, it's around the 1500s, I believe. And it wasn't for VR, like we didn't really know much about it back then, though I think it was a year ago. But I think it was like my first good creative project, and it really relates to like VR as well, like just recreating different things and letting other people enjoy it. So maybe I could recreate a city or New York City or something like that, and other people could go in, they could check it out and see what they like, don't like, you know.
It's just you go into cross history, right?
Yeah.
You can go back into the past.
Back in time, yeah.
Wow, how interesting is that? Because the more we realize how not different we are from the past, or how we're going through similar problems as they did in the past, only the technology is different. Can we learn something from that? Can we?
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. If you, for example, if you read the history from the book, that's great. But what if I put a goggle on, you step into the history and look around, see the ruins and peoples, and that's really a very different aspect of education, more experiencing than just intellectual knowledge. So I think this got a great potential in education that really put you in a scenario. Also, we found interesting enough is for the to train the reaction, in particular like rescue team, police forces, where it really put you in the real environment, see how you get trained without hurting anybody. That you can really train reaction, train how you make decision in a really a very short time. So for training, for those type of things, I think will be a huge future technology as well, right, Zach? That's those two things we found. You know.
That's extraordinary, yeah.
So maybe I add one more thing. Then Zach built a game where it's actually have cross a chasm or a tall building with a plank wood. So we have people coming in. One guy in the team put out a good goggle, maybe the boss, and the rest of the team help the boss who's afraid of height to cross it. You know, that's one of kind of experience to see your boss get scared. And then he need or she needs you to get across it, and you help that person to overcome fear. That's really a incredible bounding experience that you have without really go up there and risking your life. So so we really think that could be a great tool for team building as well, right?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
And then again, of course, it's also, and several layers, it's also in reality crossing a bridge in our lives, right? And are we afraid to cross bridges in our lives? And does this help us to be willing to do that, to make change for ourselves, to move forward in some way because we've overcome it in this virtual sense?
Yes. So to me, I overcome the fear, like my son play too much video game, he has no future. That's one big thing I have to overcome, that fear, and step back and say, Zach, what do you really like? Why do you like video game? So to sit down, talk about it, and then we have some common ground to work with. I'm not 100% into this yet, but at least we have a pretty good start. Yeah, with some common place we work on and principle we agree on, and if you want to make this a summer camp, so that's where we are right now.
It's interesting because I notice when the two of you are together and you're talking, it's not like you're different generations.
Oh, really? Like brothers?
You've
really?
Really. It's your two colleagues. Your two colleagues.
You know how wonderful that as a father I could really talk to my son as a colleague and just respect his opinion, vice versa, and we can agree the disagreement, and we talk about stuff. That's really, I enjoy that part a lot. So
yeah. It's, when I'm teaching, I have been using lately, sociology, futurism. And I ask students to envision life 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and tell me what it will be like. And then they have to go into their virtual reality in a way. And one girl who you would not have thought had such good imagination starts out by saying that she has some old man sitting in an Irish pub. And it's 5 years from now. And then he comes out of the pub and he passes out, and he wakes up, and it's the year 3000. See, and
Quite a story.
wow,
Yeah.
this is coming from someone who you wouldn't know had such good possible imagination. And what happened with this in 3,000 years? Well, she says everything was underwater. So she's already envisioning environmental issues, all of this, because she went into her imagination.
That's where I think virtual reality could bring this even one step further, is you could bring that imagination out and up while you are recreating it. So it's actually a creation, a creative process that's combined with the inner part of you, together with what you could see now. And when these two mesh together, it will create a different type of imagination that's people can enjoy too. You know, so I think, you know, that create a 6-level game, which is like, how the last one is crossing a what?
Just crossing.
Volcano.
It's basically like face your fear of heights, and
Eiffel Tower.
yeah.
One of the level.
Yeah.
What else?
There was a
volcano.
waterfall. There was a
Waterfall. Wow,
yeah,
you know.
volcano.
Imagining waterfall, you have to cross it. So that really bring, like, we can talk about it. We can try to find a waterfall somewhere in the world to try it. But if we can put this goggle on and be there now and talk about stuff, experience, life, that's really,
Real experience. What you're doing is you're tapping into real experience,
yes.
which many people have stepped away from. You know, if they're watching things on video, there's a distance between you and experience. So you don't really have this chance to see yourself in these situations, and this gives you a perspective, helps you problem solve. How do I cross this bridge?
Yeah.
You see, literally and figuratively, life is about crossing bridges, right?
Yes.
But now we're putting people there and saying, okay, what did you learn? What did they tell you that they learned?
Yeah, it's very funny, like when people cross this kind of bridges, you need different tactic to encourage them to overcome the fear. Some of them like, quiet, quiet.
Yeah.
They need quiet. Or some of them like, hey, if you get cross, you have a bagel. So they like, let's go.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, you see, people have different motivation and they are motivated differently. So all this can really give a family, a community, a team, a perspective, like when people are under pressure, how do they react, and how we help, how we really listen to why the fear is there. So I think we love that part. We have a lot of video clip, like people cross the bridge, like all kind of different styles. So you like everybody turn back to that innocent wonderment and pull deep down into
Innocent
themselves.
wonderment. Wonderful
So,
term.
yeah, we
innocent
love it.
wonderment, yes. Well, it's reconnecting with the real world, isn't it? We've gotten away too much from the real world. And this interesting, ironically enough, the virtual reality brings you back to the real
Yeah.
world.
Isn't that right?
It's really
like,
interesting.
right. So,
Looking at it from a technology perspective, it goes like virtual reality is all the way up here, but I think it's gotten to a point where all the way up here is suddenly also down here, because it's more like real life. And I guess, because if I tell you, if you go on a computer and play a game, and I tell you, okay, WASD to move, space to jump, click, and then it's going to be a lot harder to learn than just, okay, walk around and then pick up objects, you know. So I think the low level of, I guess, the low complexity of VR, because it's so close to real life, really allows parents, kids, seniors, whatever your age is, to all come together on a common ground. And
That's amazing. And that's what so many families probably really want. That they do feel the disconnect, and they do feel the lack of communication. It's across all lines and ages. And how do we get to connect with each other? And it's interesting, you're giving them an actual physical experience that allows them to connect. It's extraordinary.
So Joan, you just said it, you know, virtual reality actually help us to experience the reality. That's what it is, because otherwise, given today's society and all this, we don't have time to go climb the wall,
Yeah.
flying somewhere, but this really gets you there, right in the room and in a convenient way. But we can all talk about our experience.
Yeah, I was literally gonna say that. Yeah, it's just the fact that yes, you can go to an escape room, you can climb a cliff, but you can't. You have to make the time to go there. But in virtual reality, you put it on and you're there already. So it's just an even easier way to do all these things.
I'm interested to see what you get from this, what results you get working with people, and what you learn about it, and what people learn themselves. Well, you know, this has been a really wonderfully interesting show that I'm doing here, and it's so nice to have people of two different generations, and yet, in a way, you're not. In a way, you're not at all. So I want to thank you, Kung Lee Dang, for coming today, and I want to thank you, Zach Dang, for coming today. And I think this has been an eye-opener for me anyway, and I have a feeling for you as well. In other words, life is about discovery, exploration and discovery, and then it makes it more interesting. And there's
Definitely.
always more to learn, isn't there? We never
Absolutely.
know it all. That's why I've always said to teach is to learn. I learn from my students. They may learn from me, but I learn from them as well. And that's probably why I enjoy teaching as well. Well, thank you for coming today.
Thank you,
Thank
Joan,
you,
for the
yeah.
For
invitation.
coming to Backstory with Joan Goldstein. I wish you luck. I'm going to stay in touch with you. I'm going to see where you go and where you take it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Joan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you.